All right. So first off, today we're doing on Web Wednesday. This fine Web Wednesday is Neri by Kitano Caprioli. So Neri wants to make a magical discovery to be as great as her mother, and the opportunity arises when she is hunting for a monster. Can she uncover long forgotten secrets while saving the day? So, we got to start all the way back up here because I was reading it earlier. So Neri. First off, I love this opening panel. Just this big long scroll of night sky falling into just the scene. Love that. I think that's actually I think it's one of the better ways to start off your webtoon. Is with these big sort of like splash panels. Let's see, now you felt I felt what we've been through doing the CTA. Oh yeah, just a little bit. Um, but yeah, so but this really strong opening. I think more webtoons should I think a lot of webtoons end up doing this, but I think more should. It's just a really great way to show off not only what your story and world is going to be like, but also just the platform itself of being this big long panel like this. All right, let me pull up my notes. So Neri is a story about Neri and her adventuring partner Elodrin. As they are monster hunting, they come across a ruin. We are introduced to the idea that Neri's mother had made some discovery in a ruin, much like this X amount of time ago in the past. And so she's excited to be able to kind of follow in her footsteps. And then they find out that that this farmer who's guiding them is not so much a farmer, but also a monster. And then fight happens, and some fights and flirting happened, and then it's sort of a happily ever after in the end. So as far as the story, so like the narrative as it goes, I feel like this could actually be doing a lot more. As far as like doing the job of a one shot, it does a good job of like sort of setting the stage, like sort of establishing the important things about the world, where there are dungeons, there is a ancient knowledge that some dungeons have, and that finding it leads to success and fame and fortune and all those other wonderful things. And our main character Neri wants to follow in her mother's footsteps, because apparently she had at one point found a pretty significant rune or ancient mystery, or runes hold ancient mysteries. And so she found a pretty big one, and I guess changed the status quo of the world. However, we don't get a really good sense of Neri and then her partner Elodrin, their relationship all that much. There's some flirting, there's some sort of like romantic, sort of like falling into each other's arms kind of moments, and she acts embarrassed about it. So we get kind of a sense of like where they stand in terms of like a romantic sense, but we don't get a good sense of their relationship as adventurers or their relationship as friends. Most of the dialogue is like between like Neri and like the farmer character, and there's a lot of kind of like expositional stuff that's going on, which is not necessarily bad. It's just that I really wish that there was more just more either like banter or conversation or talking between the two of them. So, or just some scene, some small moment where we got the sense of what their status quo is, like what their day-to-day relationship is. We kind of got that towards the end, but it's mostly just them flirting with each other. It's not really, and sort of like awkwardly flirting with each other. It's not really them just kind of like talking and sort of and sort of showing us what their normal relationship is like. Whereas so like that was, and that I feel like is the core of this story, which is why I'm bringing it up. I feel like this is really This is about Neri, but this is mainly about like Neri and Eldrin and their adventure and what they're going to do together. And so the fact that we don't have a good sense of, or at least in me reading this, I didn't get a good sense of what their dynamics are. I feel like that was kind of like what in an otherwise really well structured and set up first outing, like sort of pilot. That was kind of like a really big chunk that I was missing, and I really wanted to know just something about the two of them. Oh, also I should say this now. So I have a thing to get to after this is done, so I may end up ending a little bit early or earlier than I normally do. So just heads up, this may end up only being like an hour instead of the normal like 2 hours, hour and a half. The layouts, like the panels and like the layout of everything, while like the art the art in the panel is always really great, the layouts themselves are pretty safe. It's mostly just, boxes, like either rectangles or boxes or something. There's the occasional like sort of rhombus, as it were, but there's not a lot of the sort of a lot of it is just is relying on the interior art in the panel to do a lot of the work, which is really good. Like, it's doing a lot of work. This is great. Like, just the art itself is great, but because the layouts are all pretty just sort of middle of the road safe. Just sort of standard boxes, and that there's not really any sort of interesting design or stacking of panels or layout of panels or anything like that. It's not doing anything to enhance the story. And so it's just kind of like a wasted opportunity where, like the action could have been, we've seen a couple, in some of the stuff that I reviewed, like especially in Fractal 10, where it's like, just big sharp angles, putting the having the panel be like this really sharp angled thing can intensify the action or the motion of something. Or even just having like just a different shape to show that that this moment is different from this moment, will add to the the sort of flow of information and the pacing of the story. And so while it's not doing anything bad, like it's not taking away of anything, this just feels like a missed opportunity, that this could have been really punched up if there was more attention given to the actual like layout and design of the panels. And then there's a couple of moments where the sound effects, I'm trying to see, where's an example? Oh yeah, so right here. So like here's an instance where like some of the sound effects where like the placement isn't super clear. This is an example of this is a good example where we have this panel right here, and then we have clang, and then we have the hit. So we have the sound, and then the image that sort of generated the sound, and that's a good sort of payoff, like tension release of just like, oh no, something happened, and then we see the thing happening. But then shortly thereafter, we have this moment where we have like multiple clinks, but there's only one action going on in the panel, in the scene, and we have these little dingbats or whatever, just these little symbols sort of signifying that I think are trying to sort of imply that there's like this is supposed to be reflexive of like multiple hits, but really this shot is just this one sort of this one sort of crossing of swords moment. And so having multiple sound effects, like that is saying that there's multiple things happening, but what we're seeing is only one thing, and there's just sort of a dissonance there, and it's not enhancing the scene as well as it could. That's what I figured that's what you were trying to do. Well, there's another moment later on where like, so right here, like you have him dodging multiple images here, and you have him like spinning multiple times. So like here, it makes sense to have multiple sound effects for the one sort of action that's going on here. But because there's just one sword, there's one strike here, and then the multiple things saying that the multiple sound effects, it just doesn't really mesh super well. Or rather, it's not helping the scene, I should say. It's just a distraction from the scene. It's not enhancing it. It's not doing what a sound effect should be doing, which is sort of translating how your story sounds, for lack of a better word. Let's see. And then I think there was a couple. Oh yeah, and then there's like moments like this where the art is showing that this is a big, intense moment, but the way that you've chosen to letter this sound effect is really, really weak, and so it doesn't translate the intensity of this. This does not feel like a big yell. This sort of feels like a wimpy, like yeah kind of thing. And I want to get into lettering a lot more in different webtoon, so I'll save that conversation for later. But that's something that I have been noticing a lot of in these, is that like the art can, it's usually like the art is usually the strongest thing. And then the second in these, and then barring that, the story is strong, but the panel layouts tend to not be as dynamic as they can be, but even if all those three things are doing really well, the lettering is usually just kind of okay. It's just sort of mid. It's not doing anything different or interesting. And so I want to talk about lettering when we get to it later on. But for now, that's just kind of something I noticed here, where it was like you had these up. We're like, this is great. I will say this right now, that this is a really great, solid entry. But you just had these moments where you could have given it just a bit more oomph and made it just really, really shine. And it's just sort of like a moment where it's like, oh, you're almost there. It's like you got like a really solid B+, A- here, and you could have had an A+ if you had just done a handful of other things. Let's see. So as far as narrative goes, the twist that the farmer is a monster, it was set up well enough, but there's a moment that like kind of raised some questions for me in terms of like Neri, where we see, I'll scroll back up. All right, so we see this. So visually, we as the audience know that there's something off with this guy, but the characters don't know. And so then she gives him this defensive rune because he wants to go with them, and then they enter the thing, and then we have this moment right here. Where are we? Come on. Right here. Yeah, so where she's trying to set up a bridge over the trap, and then she hits him. And then, and everything's fine. And then later on, down here, we find out that, let's see, I went past it. Yeah. So later on right here, we find out that she did that on purpose, that was a test to prove a hunch to her that this guy isn't who he says he is. However, that is like a huge gamble, because if he was just a normal guy, she could have killed him. And so like, yeah, it ultimately pays off because he is a monster, and we as the audience know that, but like but as a character, she's just rolling the dice. So she attempts to murder this person to satisfy a hunch. And while that is a compelling character choice, I don't think that was necessarily intentional. I think that was just sort of a way to show that she's more observant than we had previously assumed. But because there wasn't anything in this moment, in the moment where she created the circle, aside from pulling, after he gets hit, like there's a little bit aside with these two people where she talks to him about something. And then we find out here that she was discussing that I think something's off with him. But like before that moment happens, we don't see her like processing anything. And so like those types of moments are like not letting the reader know that this is that she's onto something. I think works for characters sort of like Sherlock Holmes in that they are that they have a little bit of like a they don't have as much empathy for the people around them as you might expect. Like very famously, Sherlock is kind of like modern Sherlock is sort of portrayed as being maybe on the spectrum of having some sort of like social disorder to where he doesn't connect with people very well. But Neri, as she's being characterized in the story, seems to be like a really sweet, empathetic, kind person. And so the fact that she like did this to a random person is such a dick move that that could have potentially gone so wrong that it just felt off. Like it was just something that really stood out to me as like, that doesn't sound like her. I think that her having like an intuitive and clever way of revealing that he's a monster or revealing that she knew he was a monster is a good idea. I just don't think that this specific way that you chose was the best way to characterize her. But that's just my opinion on that. And then I also will say that Neri's motivations also seem a little split, because in the description of the story, like the little blurb about it, and then as well as the beginning where she talks about wanting to find a rune like how her mother did, her motivations seem to be like, sort of following in her mother's footsteps, and sort of there's sort of like a sort of more of like a personal, like I want to be the best kind of a motivation there, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But later on, during the fight, she realizes that the monster defaced the rune in this temple, and she has like a small breakdown about it. Yeah, right here. So she sees the defaced rune, and then she just talks about like the loss of history and the loss of knowledge and stuff like that. And so like to me that's a different motivation, where it's like that's not being the best, that's wanting to that's education, that's wanting to know the truth, that's wanting to know the deeper meaning to things. And while those motivations aren't necessarily opposed to each other, like they're not in opposition. I just said the same thing over again. But they're not like in conflict with each other, I should say, where it's like pursuing one doesn't detract from the other, or get in the way of the other. Like it's not made super clear that she has sort of this tandem interest going on, where she wants to know, where she may have a genuine desire to know all these things, but also to follow in her mother's footsteps. And to me, that's a specific combination of things that could have been made clearer earlier on when she was talking about the runes and talking about wanting to find the secret stuff, rather than just like changing the world in some way. She was like, yeah, I want to do this like my mom. She changed everything, and oh my God, what secrets do you think we could find, or something like that. And so like it just seemed like her priorities shifted in this moment, and it was just a little off for me. So it's not that she can't want both of these things at the same time. It's just that I think we need to establish that she wants both of them at the same time a little bit better. Here we go. Oh no, I think the message got wrong. She didn't on a mistake with her spell, but she only realized it after the bridge hit the guy. My idea for her is that she always fails her spells and runes, and only realized that she did a little wrong after she corrects, and then the effect got right. Like her protection spell was done to work, but she did a mistake. Oh, okay. So your original, so if I understand this right, so it was the bridge up here, like she says that she accidentally got the rune wrong, and that's why the bridge sprung out and attacked him. So I, because she's so successful with all of the other runes that she does, other than the protection spell, because that just sort of seemed like a continuation of this same joke with this guy, where like for whatever reason, like she's good but she's not perfect. rather than you wanted to establish a sort of a pattern of she's not good, and this is a consistent thing that happens. If that's what you were trying to do, then I would not have. I would not have allowed. I would have when she's fighting, like not have done have her not succeed in most of the spells that she was using. I think that's where I got confused. Whereas like when they're fighting, in these moments, like when it matters, it's coming together and it's doing it, and she's doing her job. But if she's supposed to be, like kind of a goofball about this stuff, then I think there should have been like, it may have succeeded, but not in the way that she wanted, or there may have been more mistakes here or there or something like that. That I would have peppered more of that into the story to really establish a pattern that that this is sort of a quirk with her, where she has all this knowledge, but she can't but she's not very good at effectively using it. Yeah. Because I went in with the assumption that she was capable and book smart. But I think what you're trying to do is that she's book smart but not capable. Because like a lot of sort of dungeon crawly, swashbuckler adventure kind of things, like Indiana Jones is kind of what I was assuming. And while Indiana Jones isn't perfect, he's clever and he's effective. And so I was kind of assuming that type of a thing with her, but there just wasn't enough, I think, missteps early on to establish that she's just kind of a goof. And so that's where I thought that that's why I thought that like the bridge wasn't a mistake. It was a feint to test this guy. And so I just would have put in more mistakes and more hiccups now and again. Let's see. I will say, as far as like the action stuff goes, action's good. I also will say about her spells and stuff like that, sometimes she rhymes. Yeah, she's book smart, but she makes mistakes in real practice. Yeah, and that's really solid. I think you just need to show her messing up more, and then that would have translated. But as far as like the spells stuff go, sometimes she rhymes, sometimes she doesn't rhyme, sometimes she just yells out an incantation, or just yells out a battle cry or something like that. And so there's no like consistency to how the spells work. Now she does call them runes, so I would think that runes being symbols, that the symbol would be more important than necessarily an incantation. I don't know if this is what your goal was or not, but if it was just like she like yells out attacks like a magical girl because she wants to and doesn't need to, that's one thing, which is actually kind of funny. So like, but I would just establish that at some point, or if she does need to do an incantation to make the spells work, in addition to the rune, then I think there needs to be a consistency in what she needs to do, rather than just sort of yell out something, because there's like, she either everything needs to rhyme, or or it needs to be like a certain number of words, or just some specific rule to sort of establish that like this is how magic works here, rather than it just sort of being a random thing that sort of happens around her doing a spell. I will also say that the enemies yelling their attacks, I personally, this is just a personal thing for me, I hate that trope in anime. The yelling of an attack. I think it can be used effectively. I think it can it can lend itself to some really cool moments, but only when it's used like sort of sparingly or purposefully, rather than but there's a ton of anime where like every single attack has a name and every single attack is yelled, and to me it's just a distraction. And so here, because like I think later on he just yells mega acid jet while also spewing acid, and then he yells claws. Now, if these, now if you have if you've set up this world where your magic system requires some type of incantation and that incantation is yelling the attack name, that's one thing. That's how your world works. And so, go forth and be merry. But if it doesn't, and these are just, they're just saying it for, for anime purposes, then I don't think it's adding anything to your story. And so I think that I don't necessarily think that would be super. I don't think it's helping you. Is my thing. So you could just have the visuals of the attacks, and then like her magic, and then also it also separates like her spells from everybody else's attacks, makes her more unique. But that's just a personal opinion on my part. If you want it in there, that is all you. But yeah. So this was this was fun. This was super cute. Weirdly enough, this is a great panel. It's just effects and stuff. But like here's the setup, and then bam, and then we have this little payoff right here. You have a really good sense of like time, like payoff with with single attack stuff, which is great. And so that was really effective. But I just like that. And then also the lettering here is really good. Let's see. I went for more anime purposes with the names, at least with the monsters, and narrate and incantation is necessary. I'll have to establish more consistency with it. Yeah, just if she has to do an incantation, then set up rules for the incantation so it's the same every time, so it doesn't feel arbitrary. Oh god damn it. Looks like there's a bot in chat. Nano, could you take care of that, please? So I can continue with the stream. Because screw that guy. Or whatever bot that is. If not, I'll take a hot second and ban them. But yeah, so this was fun. I enjoyed this. This was nice. Again, really solid first first pilot. There's just like a handful of things here and there that I think you could have done that would have really boosted this and made it that much more of a stronger entry. But otherwise really good. And I love the sort of like color pencil coloring thing that you're doing. I don't know if that's like actual color pencil or if that's just like a digital effect or something, but I actually really like it. It's very storybooky. Oh hey Kristen. Oh, this is the first time in a Web Wednesday stream? Well, cool. Yeah, I'm just talking comics. Yeah, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, Kristen. I think we have a very similar knowledge base when it comes to comic and comic design and stuff. All right. Next up, it's digital. It's a texture I place over the colors at the end. Oh, okay. That's a really great choice. I think that thank you for your advice. It was a good critique. There are a lot of things for me to think about. Awesome. Yeah. I actually really love that effect. I think it gives it a very, really fun sort of storybook feel to it. And it makes your art stand out from the rest of everything else. Like it's just a visual kitsch that makes it unique amongst other stories like it. And I think that just that one simple thing, I think, sets you apart from a lot of people, and that's really good. Oh, hang on, I gotta read the thing. Okay, so we have Angela, the Princess of the Dual Light Swords, by Zeke. It's in a city full of unsolved murder mysteries. Angela finally achieves her ultimate goal, living a normal life. However, after discovering a hidden secret passed down through her family, it seems fate has made her fight against the evil in the city with her gifted power. All right. So this is, in a nutshell, I think what this was attempting to be is Little Red Riding Hood with lightsabers and lightsabers and like sort of Joss Whedon-esque banter. As far as like narrative and stuff goes, this is a really strong opening. Like we get a really quick but really effective setup of like the status quo of the world, where normal world, but there's just a series of unsolved murders. Um, and then I will say, and then we have this sort of mysterious serial killer that people call people that people are assuming, or rather, that they think that these murders are being done by werewolves for whatever reason. We don't know, but we don't necessarily need to know. We just know that like it's just sort of defining these murders as hinky and sort of like animalistic in nature. And then we cut to laser sword fight with monster, and then Angela proceeds to kick this guy's ass. So this is all really good, really solid. The action is great. The story does fall apart at the end, where after this very long fight with this guy, there's a character that's introduced who is meant to kind of usher Angela into like a different part of this world, where like up until now she's been fighting these things alone, but apparently there's like an organization or a group of people who are fighting these things. But that interaction is pretty confusing. And so it doesn't necessarily land in terms of setting up the new status quo. This is sort of like the big. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and just talk about like the biggest issue that I have with this, in that the dialogue is not great. The dialogue is part of why the confusion happens. Now, to be fair, I do not believe that that Azik is a native English speaker. I think that this is all that the dialogue is all translated dialogue. So there is to be expected some clunkiness, if that's the case. But it's frustrating to me because, when I in writing for Crunchyroll and things like that, I'm used to seeing raw English translations, and then trying to figure out how to rework them and make them into more naturalistic sounding spoken English. And so I read this and I'm just like, this needs a localization pass. This needs someone with a modicum of writing ability, and or rather just who can write sort of realistic dialogue, taking this and just reworking it into something, because like it's here. The frustrating thing is that all the great stuff that would make that this story has is all here and present. It's just getting the dialogue is just kind of getting in the way of all of it, and it's obfuscating some of the more interesting aspects of the story. And so like it just needs someone to come in and just sort of rework it to make it just to make it sound more naturalistic. But the panel the panel layouts and designs are really great. Action is really, really good, really solid. Actually, this is one of the stronger action heavy ones that I've read so far. But the dialogue is just really frustrating, which I don't want to pile on about, because like I said, I'm pretty sure that the creator is not a native English speaker, so it's not anything, so like for not being a native English speaker, this is still pretty solid. I just wish someone came in and did a pass on it. And then also, this is visually, there's a lot of allusions to Little Red Riding Hood. I have the same problem. English is really awkward, which is why I have an editor. Yeah, you just need an editor. This needed an editor is kind of what I was getting at. But visually, there are a lot of allusions to Little Red Riding Hood. She has a red coat. Her hair is red. She's fighting werewolves. Or things that say they're werewolves. But how the monster's behaving is more of vampire-esque, or how I understand the vampire myths to be. She talks about him being immortal. He doesn't transform into a werewolf at all. Her swords are laser swords. So like he feels more like a vampire than a werewolf here. Um, and so I think that there needs to be just more kind of be more consistency in how the monsters are expressed. Now, granted, if you want to like, if you're creating your own version on or your own take on the werewolf myth, and that they are this sort of like functionally like hybrid thing of like vampire and werewolf or something, that's fine. But like a really like the like one of the main things that makes a werewolf is the transformation, and the fact that he doesn't transform at all in this fight is disappointing and frustrating, to say the least. But yeah, this is a really good panel right here. It's just I could just eat this. This is fucking amazing. And so I think that there needs to be a better establishing, either like just a better expression of them being werewolves, or just a clear definition of like, these are my werewolves. Because not every, because like anime werewolves don't function as like normal sort of like, or as traditional like Hollywood werewolves, or or even like European myth werewolves or anything like that. So you can have your own take on these things, but like a cornerstone of what a werewolf is, and regardless of any medium, is a transformation into a wolf-like thing, into like either a giant wolf or a sort of like furry giant monster thing, or like the sort of anime like halfway in between where they just kind of get like really shaggy sideburns and some claws. But there needs to be some sort of transformation, and he just doesn't do it throughout the fight. So he just registers as a vampire. And the way that he also like that he burns away and stuff like that's very vampire to me. So there just needs to be some more, either more information or a tighter focusing on the expression of the monsters. But yeah, other than that, this another was a really solid entry. Just I wish there was some sort of like, I would be interested to think if there maybe was like a within the Canvas community of just like people who volunteered to be editors or something. I mean, it's super time consuming. So I can understand like why there wouldn't be a whole lot of access to it, but like just sometimes all these like things need is just like an editor, just someone to come in and have a second pass on stuff for it to kind of really come together. And I think that's there are. Oh, okay. Well then I guess more people need to have access to them, or there needs to be more of them or something. But yeah, just like this just needed an editor really. And it could have been really, really great, but because of the dialogue, unfortunately, this is nowhere near as strong as it could be. And so that was frustrating. You can find a lot of people volunteering to help you out. Okay, that's good. Yeah, then I guess just like just talk to people, figure out what like who would be available to help you out with stuff. Editors are wonderful. Editors are amazing. All right, our next comic that we are talking about today is Storm Surge by R.I. Place. And so it's like their ship's going. So the story is their ship's going down, but without a fight. But not without a fight. Drake and Zidane, or Zidane, if you want to pronounce it like Final Fantasy localization nonsense, must battle the surging storm, swelling seas, and a scourge of pirates to escape a watery grave. Caught in the eye of the storm, Zidane bears witness to the untempered rage of a gale force hurricane. Having editors in Canvas would be great. Most of us having this as their second language. I'm lucky I know people that work on translation, but yeah, it should be more accessible. Yeah, I think language barrier is also a thing. See, most of the more skilled people, like my editor, people you hire, but their rates are very affordable because they understand Canvas comics are not swimming in money. Okay. Yeah. So that's like that. There seems to be there seems to be either like the notion that editors are available, I think needs to be more proliferated. This is my assumption because I'm not a part of the Canvas creator community, so I don't know what the internal machinations are. But if there's like if people either should know more about the availability of editors, or like Nana was saying, that like there are people who you do have to afford, you have to hire them on, but they understand that that like people who are going to be hire them are not necessarily people who have a lot of money, and so they make their rates affordable. That is still a barrier for some people. Even with more affordable rates, some people can't afford it, and so that's kind of that's unfortunately like unless more people volunteered, that's just sort of a reality. But yes, editors. Editors are wonderful. But yeah, let's see. Editors are just other canvas creators who offer to be editors, but Webtoon Canvas doesn't offer that. Oh, okay. So it's just people. It's just other creatives offering to be editors. Okay. I mean, editing is its own. It is its own skill set, and some people are better editors than they are like creatives. Like they have a better sense of how to focus and amplify something rather than carve it out from scratch. And so like the world needs good editors. Like so it is a tremendous asset. So yeah. Awkward transition. Here we go. So Storm Surge. I thought I went all the way back up. All right. So this essentially is two sailors trapped on a sinking boat, are not really rescued or just sort of found by, I guess, pirates. And then one of the sailors murders the shit out of the other pirates, and they kind of have to deal. Yeah. And then that's the end of the story. This is a really, really great opening panel here where we have the title, and we go into just a starry night, and then we go into rain, and then we have this long, just the boat thrashing around in the ocean. I think that like the images are really well placed to where you have this nice break of just water, and then a new situation for the boat, and then a new situation for the boat. Like this is really, really good, and I love this opening. In fact, I actually love it so much that when we step away from it and we get into just the normal narration of things, and it's just panels on black, I actually was disappointed because I wanted to. There was another comic that I had covered earlier. I don't remember which, but it was the one where the janitor. It was John Wick as a janitor, where that creator had like the sort of like rain effect in the background, and it sort of enveloped everything and kind of gave the sense that like that the rain is just really, really heavy. Here, I would have loved the backgrounds to have something reflexive of the storm, like either rain or water or just something to sort of keep that massive, like imposing, powerful feeling. Calem's. Yes, it was Calem's comic. Thank you. The power and like the danger of the situation that they're in, just sort of constantly remind us about the sort of weather that they're fighting. I think that would have added a lot more to, especially when the violence starts. I think that would have added a lot more to what's going on. And so I think that the just the black is a fine decision, but I think that there was a missed opportunity there. But yeah, so also the water in here tends to really be solid, like the rain on clothes and stuff. Like it's that I think just like added more work on top of stuff, and there's just like these really nice simple answers to this to everything being wet all the time. And so like that was really solid. But this is the comic that I wanted to talk about lettering. With especially this right here. So in this webtoon, we have the like, raindrop sounds and stuff, and like the sloshing of them moving around on the boat. But then we have this, which is just a normal dialogue box and normal dialogue text that's supposed to be an effort. It's supposed to be just a kind of thing. But because this is no different aesthetically than the spoken dialogue, like right here, it doesn't read as an effort. It reads as spoken dialogue. So it just sounds like he's saying hup. Or this when I look at this just looks like he's just saying hup, not that he is making a any sort of like guttural lifting noise. And so this is kind of where lettering becomes really important, because lettering is the special effects of it's like the sound design and special effects of your web comic or of any comic. Lettering is sort of a visual way of showing how your world, how your characters and how your world is supposed to sound. So the lettering is going to be affecting if people reading it have an internal monologue, because not everybody does. But if they have any kind of internal monologue, it's going to affect like how they're reading it and how it's registering to them, rather than it being all the same thing all the time. And so lettering is actually super important in selling the nuance of your story and the important information. Something that you see a lot in comics that I like print comics, because I think it's just more there's just a longer history of it that I do not see often in webtoons and in webcomics, is like is sort of like the highlighting of a single word in a sentence or a handful of words, the important stuff. It can sometimes doing that can just let you know that like this idea is important, or sometimes it can translate to like this is what the character is emphasizing when they're reading it, so it's giving them a cadence. It's like, it's kind of showing how they would be saying these things. Also like just the design of the lettering can also add to the character. I think hang on, I think I'm thinking of something right now. Sandman comic. Here we go. Yeah. So here we are. So this is a page from Sandman, but this is how Dream talks. Hold on. I know that the webtoon editors really care about lettering, because every single review I have with the webtoon editors, lettering is one of the first things they mention, and they emphasize a lot. Yeah, no, lettering is one of those things where like it is like effects work, where the better you do it, the less you notice that it's there. And so, but if it's not there, then it's, or it's not doing a great job, or you're not doing a great job of it, then you can really notice it. Or actually, here's a better one. Okay. So here we have two characters. One is Dream and the other is whoever this person is. I don't know. I'm not familiar with this particular, panel from the comics, but, you can see like Dream, his word balloons, the way that the words are designed, and the sort of floaty, bubbly nature about everything. Like it's very indicative of that. Let's see. Lettering tells you the tone, speed, and emotion of the storytelling. Yes, Kristen, that's exactly what I'm getting at. But here's just sort of a really good example of like two different characters speaking two different ways, and that visually being shown by how they're lettered. Like even though the word balloon designs are pretty similar, they're just kind of like squiggly lines, and so they're kind of like, they're sort of floaty and ethereal maybe. Like they're still distinct enough to where these feel like two completely different characters. Not every comic needs this amount of lettering in it, but this is just even speech. This isn't even going into effects like this. Like something that I've been noticing about a lot of these entries is that the sound effects lettering is pretty generic. It's not, like this is just sort of like a font blown up with a shadow on it. Whereas if, like you could make this look more liquidy, or you could, there's some more intensity you could put out there. Same with here too, where it's not, here's another sort of lettering thing where he's just making efforts, but because it's this big word balloon sort of awkwardly put around in this word balloon, it just sort of reads like this strange, it's cutting into the emotion of the story, and it's sort of making it like he's just saying, ha, and it's just not translating as a sound. But yeah, lettering is super important, and I recommend that everyone gets like there's books, like I did a brief Google earlier to just see if there was anything specific, because I know that there's like books that are older, like from like the 70s and 80s, but for print stuff. But I was trying to find something more recent, and there's YouTube stuff from webtoon creators that talk about lettering and how to letter. There's comic book creators, like print comic book creators on YouTube, that talk about lettering and stuff like that. So like really check that out and learn about that, because that will just enhance your story. And so that's that lettering rant. And Webtoon has lettering workshops available. Awesome. Yeah, so take those. Like, lettering is super important, guys. Never like there are people who it's sort of like how sort of like inkers in comic books in comic books, where like some artists work better with certain inkers because of there's certain because they can see certain tendencies of the line art guy, and like there are some writers who work better with some letterers because the letterers understand like the best way to interpret the words on the page. And so lettering is an art in and of itself. It is a skill in and of itself, and I recommend everyone learn more and get some semblance about it. I'm pretty sure there's some Skillshare courses too. Marvel's Guide to Comics has some great advice on how to translate to webtoons. Because it's print media, so like there's not everything's going to translate, but Marvel had some really good art books and like design, like comic design stuff. Like there's like doing art the Marvel way and stuff like that. DC had some really good writing stuff. So like look for those books. But yeah, lettering is, again, cannot stress the importance of lettering more. Let's see. Okay. There's some panel design in this is really cool. Like this right here, where we have this sort of shield thing. But something that I love about this this webtoon in particular too is that like that these are really long panels, and so like it's like this moment right here, like we sit with it for a while as we scroll down, and it just sort of focuses more on his face and down to here. And it just really shows the sort of despondence that he's feeling, and the despondence of the situation. And so these nice big long panels are doing a lot to show the not only just the scene, but the emotion behind the scene as well. Yes, Nano linked the Webtoon Canvas lettering workshop in chat, so guys, check that out. Art colleges will sometimes have courses too that might help. Always go free for. Oh yeah, no. When you start paying to learn this stuff, gets really expensive real fast. I know that there's the Kubert School of Art and Design in New Jersey, which is an art school specifically for comic books. That's their whole thing, is sort of graphic design and animation, but it's all geared towards comic books. It is an art school, and it is in New Jersey, so it's balls expensive. But if you can, if you're able to go, like by the time you leave, you are good, and you will more than likely have a job or some type of job offer. Or at least that's what I understand. That's how I understand it to be. As far as like the action goes, when it shows up later on, it's pretty intense, but there are continuity issues, and some sort of logic issues. Actually, well, it's just mostly just continuity issues with the action. So like I will scroll down real quick. Okay, yeah. So like right here, we get into a fight. So we have that, and then he grabs the knife. But yeah, okay. So here we have this moment right here. So here we have, he hits him with the bucket, and then in the confusion he grabs the knife, comes down, and then now we see that he's cut his throat, but he has like a good like foot and a half distance from him, and so he's kind of back where he was where he threw the bucket. So this sequence of events is he throws the bucket, he runs up, he grabs the knife, he stabs him, and then he immediately backs off back to where he was. And in that time period, like, he's so fast that this guy's, his blood is only just starting to spew out. If it was something, there was the Crow comic that I talked about, it was last week, where the girl had swung the axe, and it's supposed to be like the axe in a resting position after she had swung it, but the axe was resting in the opposite direction, so it looked like she was about to attack, not having finished an attack. This is something like that, where just the continuity is obfuscating what's happening in the sequence of events, and it's confusing. And there's also, this is just sort of, I don't really know if this is a nitpick or not, because this seems kind of important to me, but he is murdering people with a harpoon here. And then he throws the guy in the water. Harpoons are designed to stick to whatever they impale. They're not spears. They're sort of like nails, where they're meant to connect and stay in whatever it is that they stab into. And so, like, him throwing him off should not have been this easy. It should not have been. He should not have just slid off the end like a spear. Now, if this, and also because there's this hook, like, also this should have been much more visceral. Like, there should be like bits of him inside this hook still, are still attached to the hook, like chunks of flesh and innards and stuff. Now, if this was a moment to like show how strong he is, where he is so strong that he can just fling him off this harpoon as if it is just a spear, that's one thing. But I think this scene needs to sell that more, and there has to be a bigger impact, and like there has to be bits of him on this thing. Like, it needs to look nastier and more impressive than him just flinging him off onto the side. Yeah, I want gore. I want viscera. I want blood. If you're gonna tease me with it, then just tease me with it. But that's just sort of like a continuity error or continuity issue here, where it's just like the weapon he's using is not functioning the way that it should. Also, the spear disappears here. I don't know what happened to it, but it's gone, because in this panel right here, he has it in both hands, and then here it's just disappeared. Don't know what happened. Oh, the tip needs to be broken prior, and the block hooks need to be removed when stabbed. Or, yeah, Kristen, that is also a solution. Unfortunately, whip time someone gets mad for blood and gore. Oh, well, well, I don't know. Kristen had a less gory... Kristen had a less gory answer in chat. So there's other things that you can do. I love this panel right here. With just the water flying off of him. Like, this is really selling how fast he's moving to me, how fast he's moving and how impressive this strike is going to be. So like, this shows me that, excuse me. This shows me that, that RI Place knows exactly what they're doing, or has an idea of what to do. And that just needs to be, some more attention paid to the continuity of the action. Also, my final critique on this, see here, we get crunch, we get bones breaking and stuff. I have two final critiques on this. One is that, they're supposed to be in the middle of a hurricane, and yet there's a random boat full of pirates or privateers, who are just out there in the middle of a hurricane, who have the composure to take advantage of somebody else as their ship is sinking. To me, that feels like a stretch, where it's like, like, unless their ship is designed to survive this kind of weather, which it doesn't. It doesn't look much different than the boat that these guys are on. Then it's sort of the implication is that these guys are out in the middle of a storm, like hunting people down, which sort of assumes that like other people are out here. Like it's just sort of a logic thing in the story that I that doesn't kind of come together for me. And while it is a great setup for for this guy to kind of go full Rambo on these dudes, like it just doesn't make sense that this event would happen for me. Also, this doesn't feel like an action story. This feels like a drama with a lot of violence in it. Like action stories are sort of like a quick and dirty definition of what an action story is that the emotional stakes, like the character stakes and also the plot stakes of the story are resolved through combat. Whereas here, the violence is only serving to characterize someone, and it's not, and we're just it's just supposed to inspire fear. It's not really resolving anything other than the immediate danger. And so it's not, the violence is not necessarily the story, it's the shock and horror about the violence that's part of the story. And also like the premise of this story of these guys just sort of being trapped on a boat and then having to kill a bunch of people, like it doesn't lend itself to, okay, well, how then will violence be a part of the continuing narrative of this story? And so part of the reason why I bring it up is because this was the Call to Action series was supposed to be about action series, like creating an action series or story, and this feels like a drama with violence in it, not an action story. Action is like, violence isn't like the only way to solve that problem. That was just the way that character ended up deciding to solve that problem. And so, also pulled away, the camera is also pulled away or focused off on the action. That's true. Yeah. It's a lot about his reaction to the violence, not the violence itself. That's another thing. So I wouldn't call this an action story necessarily. So I don't think it necessarily meets that requirement of the competition. All right. Next we have Set Him Free by Akame S. So this is the Artemis League massacre was just the first violence leading to the collapse of the capital city. The god of bats has possessed Haruto and forced him into unspeakable actions, pitting him against his friends in the league. His closest friend, Ryo, is the only one with a chance of killing him and ending the bloodshed, but Haruto, of all people, does he expect to kill the only boy he loves the most after getting abandoned by his late friends? All right. So right off the bat, this is the color, like the coloring in this is really great. There's a lot of like interesting like design stuff going on, and this is like when I was talking about earlier, where just like something in the black to reflect on the situation of the world around it, like with the storm surge, we're just having some sort of like water or something to remind us that they're surrounded by it. Here we have little flecks of ash and stuff in the black to remind us that the whole city's on fire, and it really does a lot to sort of tie every panel together into telling the story. However, aside from like some of the panel stuff and the coloring, this is a giant mess of a comic. The effects and stuff that are on here, this is decent. This is decent lettering here, especially, but like the effects are so big. Let's see. I would also put it out there, while I do understand comics very well, I also learned sequential art is not for everyone. Anyone who does this earns a lot of respect from me. It's hard. Oh yeah. I forgot to do this at the top of the thing, just to make sure that everyone's always aware. But like, I'm coming at this as a writer. I'm a writer. I work for. I'm an independent contractor for Crunchyroll. So I work in adapting anime for English audiences. I've studied comics and comics writing and comics design for most of my life. My first love is comics. I'm not a part of Webtoon. This is not any sort of official thing. I know most people in chat know this by now, but I just want to make sure on the record that everyone knows that this is not any sort of official thing. This is just me reviewing the stuff that you guys asked me to review about your work. And so this is purely my opinion. The fact that any of this gets made is phenomenal. Like making anything is hard. Making comics is also is even harder in its own right. And so like the fact that these are done and they exist is a massive accomplishment, and you should be proud of that, regardless of what I say, good or bad. And there is value in these things existing. But that, going back to my critique, this is a bit of a mess. There is so much that is just alluded to in the narrative of this, of stuff that we don't really see. We only see fragments of, or people referring to things here or there, that it doesn't make any sense really. I get that. Like I read, I think the thing that we're just supposed to get from the story is that this guy with this sort of this Drakengard 3 looking guy, he has taken over the mind or body of somebody, of this guy's boyfriend, and I guess by killing him he will save him. I don't really know. That's not very clear. But that's all I really understood. There's a lot of like relationship stuff that's referenced, or like, things that happened, massacres that happened, but none of it's shown, none of it's expounded upon, so it just left me really confusing. Visually, a lot of things are either like set up, but they're not super clear, and so when the payoff happens later, it feels this like out of context madness. Like, I didn't know that he had a gun until I read this like second or third time. Or that his arm was this like stone, like crystal ice thing. It's not until like right around here. Yeah, like right around here where his arm just kind of gets cut off. And I had no idea that he had that arm, so I was just very confused as to why there was this crystal arm and why he was freaking out about it. And then also, the camera on all of these shots is pulled in so close to the character that I have no idea what's going on. Like, here we have him falling, but then here, like, we have this we just have like a hand and kind of a face, and then as we scroll down, I guess there's a cut, and then we have this just big fucking wing that's obfuscating everything. And then here we have a blur, which I guess is his hand, don't fully know, and then all of a sudden, and then we have this. And like, if this shot had just pulled out more and we got to see like the full body here, and like him and the full model of him here, this would have been clearer. But because this is the only window that we have of this action, like, I'm lost. I don't know what's happened. I don't know what I'm supposed to be looking at. And then we have like this right here where like he does something. I guess he's pushing him. I don't know, because I don't know what this is. And then there's an explosion. And then now we're behind him, and I don't know what happened. I guess he shot a laser or something. And so like this by itself, like this panel by itself is really great. Like the speed lines and the small effects and the layering of different like effects over stuff, and even the lettering here with just wham and the explosion. This is all really effective as sort of like a single like panel thing, but as a sequence, as sequential art, as a sequence of bits of a story, it is not coming together, and I don't really know what's going on. I'm just very confused. And then I guess he got shoved into something, and like, it's just, I just don't know what's going on. The dialogue kind of suffers from the same issue as Angela did, where I believe that the artist isn't a native English speaker, and so it just comes across as awkward and chunky or clunky. Like this is another one too, where like, okay, so he pulls out his gun and then he fires and he dodges it by bowing forward, I guess. Which doesn't make sense because he's bowing towards the bullet. But I guess if he wants to be fancy that way, he can. But then there's this, and I have no idea what this is. I have no idea what he's doing here. There's a foot and his hand, and I don't know where his other foot is. And there's this sort of flare out of his coat here. I don't know what he's doing in this panel. It was just, I spent way too long trying to figure that out. It was very weird. And then now he's caught it in his teeth, which is always a really fun anime thing to see. But it, again, just doesn't make sense with the sequence of events and where his body is and how it's leading into the next panel. It's just odd. It's the number one issue for young artists is learning what to focus on and why. Yes. Like what's being focused on in this is not adding to the clarity or flow of your story. It's only adding to the impressive like action sensibilities. Like I think Akame has a really good sense of action and how to sell impact and speed, and like the explosions and stuff are really cool, but there is not anything but the story is just not there. And it kind of reminds me of sort of like a Michael Bay film where it's just, it's just mayhem everywhere, but there's not really a narrative, or if there is a narrative, it's getting lost in all the explosions and gunfire. And that's kind of what's happening here, where I'm seeing like effects and explosions and blurs and word balloons and stuff. I know I didn't mean to, it's what came to mind. It's a pretty harsh criticism. And I don't think I mean it in the fullest extent. Michael Bay's plot is explosions. Oh, I see. There's emotional nuance in that pyrotechnic display. But yeah, so there's just so much going on narratively that is not explained to us or shown to us as the audience for context, so we don't know why or what's happening. Visually, the stuff that is being focused on is not pushing the story forward and isn't clarifying any of the action that's going on, and so it just comes across as a mess. There's a lot of good stuff here. There's a lot of like, there's a lot of showing of like good taste and good sense of how to execute things, but there needs to be a lot more work put into this to make it into like a much more solid story rather than just sort of like a visual display. This is a really good shot. See, this is really good right here. So he's small and the explosion's big, and this is selling this massive impact. This right here, this is a great panel for the action. I know, and the setup right here is solid enough where we have the gun in the foreground, so we know this is like a setup for something, and that this is important with the flare and everything, and then explosion. These two panels right here, I just want more of this in the story. I just want more of this all the time, and unfortunately it's just not there. Using the format very tall page to scroll down to its fullest. Yes. That's something Kristen, I talk about that a lot in these and also in the writing workshop that I did back in May, is that like the Webtoon, the greatest asset you have as putting it on Webtoon is that you have a built-in control over the flow of your comic and how someone's reading it, because you know that they can only read it in one direction and at a certain pace, and that is the scroll. So like really tall, long panels are your friend to sell big moments. And understand that your sequence of events is going to kind of go like this rather than like this and then back up to another page over here. So this is like this shows me that Akame knows, that Akame has the ability to make something really, really cool. And so I am excited to see what she would do in the future. But this unfortunately is just not coming together for me. and so this was frustrating for me to read, because, like I said, I saw there was a lot of good things in here, but it just didn't come together. And then finally, we have Empathy for the Devil. So, sent on a military mission to purge escaped assets, the aloof Eblis Sebastian must make a choice to continue following his orders or save what he has been sent to destroy. See, all action should be pointed down or at an angle. Use those tall pages. Yes, Kristen, preach. Preach. Amen, sister. So I scrolled all the way. Why am I going back to where? Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is a story, post-apocalyptic, nightmare setting. We've got rat furries, and robots, and e-cigarettes, dudes with purple hair, and guns and swords, and Swordman is sent to hunt the rat furries, and then has a change of heart, and then fights purple-haired guys with e-cigarettes. That is a very, very, very truncated exposition for what the story is. There's actually quite a lot going on here that I think is really compelling and interesting. My main critique about this, because yes, waffles. Because the panel designs are really good. Something actually I really love about what you did here, waffles, that I think a lot of people that I've read so far haven't executed super well, is that you take the time to have these like little in between moments to show the progression of the action. So like here we have an example of it where like chasing, noticing, and then a reaction, and then a payoff here. And so this is a really clear sequence of events where we kind of know where everybody is, we know what they're doing. There's another one that I really like, that it's just a small moment. Hang on. It's right here. So here you have them running, and then you focus on the dad, and you see him you see him kind of like realize and think about something, and then you see him push, and we don't know why, but he shoves him away, and then the payoff is here. And so you have I would have been a bit more clear, like I think I would have made these a bit bigger, because on the phone this is really hard to see, but you see this, like you see that he's pushing him up this cliff, and then now he's running away, and this person just doesn't care. And then later on we have the payoff where now we forget about the kid because he's not important. What's important at the moment is the chase with the dad, and so dad dies, and then they're just like, oh, we got to go find the kid because we ignored him, and then we see him just come down here. And then he's now back in the scene. So now we know where. So now him showing up the way he does reminds us, oh yeah, we saw him run away, and we saw him run up the cliff, and we understand why the other characters are like, are sort of like going back to base or something, because we forgot about him, so they weren't paying attention to where he was. And then now that he's back in the scene in this way, and it just draws everything back together. So this is a really great, just little bit of sequence of events. And there's a really, really strong sort of continuity flow in the story, and I really like that. And that's not present in a lot of the entries that I've been seeing, or it's not as strong of a presence as a lot of entries in the scene, or entries in the competition. I will say, in terms of like narrative, I think there's a little bit too much going on here. You have, you've got like, you introduce sort of like the genetically modified animals, which are the furries. You've got these little AI things. You have the AI god. You have this guy who is some sort of super assassin, and then you have the other girl, and then other person, with the gun, and then you have all these different things in the world going around. And then you also have like transformation gun, which I think is the biggest sort of like thing that puts everything over the edge. You have all these different ideas, and you touch on them, but there's just so much information going around that it is distracting from the story. Where like later on when he has the little when his little AI thing, oh, cat thing. Hang on, let me just scroll. Oh no, dead dad. Oh no. But like, yeah, this little cat thing that's floating around. He talks to it, and it's towards the very end. Come on. Oh yeah, here's another thing too. So like something else I really love too is that you reference the boat early on, where like the dad yells, "Get to the boat," and then we see the boat on fire down here, and no one talks about the boat again. So you just set up the boat in dialogue, and then you pay off it visually, and then the characters just react to it, and that's just really good storytelling. I think some people have like the temptation to like have some spoken dialogue about the payoff here and just reminding or just sort of some sort of direct reference to it, but you let the art do the story here, and it just lets that scene hit really a lot harder. But yeah, here, so we have this. He tells his AI to cover the cat, and then there's like this argument that he has with his AI, whereas like he's not going to do it. It's like because of the intelligence rule, which I don't know what the intelligence rule is, and it hasn't been brought up yet, and so like it's just this confusing new piece of information, and then he won't override it, and then he says, he has a line right here where it's I fall into the same stupid rule too, and so it's like, oh okay, well then what is this guy, so there's just all this new information that's happening when the drama is happening. It's taking away from the drama, and it's just making me curious about like what the answers to these things are. But the transformation gun, I want to get into the transformation gun. So you have you set up this thing called the transformation gun, which is something that the father and son, have stolen from this presumably post-apocalyptic bunker thing. And that's kind of like the MacGuffin that everyone's after. Like that's the reason why they're hunting them down. And then here you have him. Destroy his AI thing, and then use the transformation gun to turn into sexy sword demon man, and then just attack everybody. And then the transformation gun is out of the story. It doesn't do anything. You don't need that in your story at all. Everything that happened or it caused, like that it inspired or that it caused, could have happened independently of it. Like the fact that they stole anything, regardless of the weapon, like would be reason enough for them to be hunted down. Even just the fact that they ran away is reason enough to hunt them down. There's a reference about it turning people berserk, but like you don't need that plot device for this character to make this kind of transformation. He could just do it. Like this is your story, your rules, and he could just there could just be a reveal here where he transforms and reveals that he's modified, and then goes about doing it. Like there is nothing in this story right now is tied to that item that makes it pivotal to anything. And so like you could just take it out and it not affect anything in the story. So it doesn't really need to be there. And that would free you up for more space to talk about the world or to set up more drama or something like that. No, you don't have to get rid of Sexy Demon Man. Sexy Demon Man is a cornerstone of this whole, sexy sword demon. He is the payoff for this whole story. This is why we're here, is to see Sexy Sword Demon murder. And so like, don't get rid of him, but he doesn't need the transformation gun to become Sexy Demon Man, Sexy Sword Demon Man. He could just be, Sexy Sword Demon and then just transform into Sexy Sword Demon. So like you don't need to you don't need to answer every question that you raise in a pilot, because your pilot is just establishing the world. And if you're establishing mysteries or things that'll pay off later, then you just need to give enough information to kind of translate why this is important, not exactly the full extent of what it is. But here, there's just so much stuff. Oh, this layout is fucking awesome right here, where we have the bang, and then we just have them, and then we have and like as we're scrolling down, we just see him falling off the cliff. This is really good. But and then like the AI god shows up. So like get the reasoning for the gun. Yeah. So like I would really recommend something where like just figuring out what like you clearly have a sense of what your world is. Now for this part of the story, I think you need to figure out what's important for the reader about your world right now. And just tell them that, like like, do we really need to know anything about the AI god, or can it just be a random reveal at the very end, or maybe it just has like a different, more obfuscated name or something, like, do we need to know what a genetically modified animal is, or can we just call them like experiments or refer to them as something, and then get later down the line define what a genetically modified animal is. So like just figuring out what you need right now, and then just explaining that versus having all of this information being dumped in the very beginning, whereas this could have been paced out over like 3 or 4 chapters. And you still wouldn't be sacrificing anything. You would just be sort of trimming the fat out of what you have. So yeah. And there's a little story there. Removal may work better with less information. Yeah, well, just not less information. Just focus on the important stuff. Just focus on what's relevant to what's happening. And then reveal the other stuff later, or talk about the other stuff later as it becomes relevant. But yeah, so this is, so that's the end for this week. We had some really good stuff. We had some really crazy stuff. Thanks to everyone who came out today. Kristen, good to see you. It's nice to know that there's another comic nerd professional aside from everyone in the Canvas stuff. This is really solid. Thank you for sending it for sending and asking me to look at it. Kristen's also gives your theme more time to breathe. Yes. Yeah. You free up more space for the more, like you trimming out the fat gives space for the more important stuff to come to the forefront and just breathe and exist for as long as it needed to. And I'm glad that everyone had a good time and thought that this was insightful. I will be back next week with more webcomics to be talking about. So until then, have fun. I've been talking about this on Twitter, but in case anyone wasn't mentioning, but this week is pretty busy for me, so I'm not going to have many other streams this week if you guys were planning on checking those out or not. But yeah, so I'll see you guys next week for the next round of webtoons to talk about. So I'll see you guys around. Bye.